From the second a crime is committed, traces of the crime are left in the environment. The location where a crime took place can be full of physical evidence, which can link the crime to the criminal and ultimately assist the police in their investigation. This location is known as the crime scene. Crime scenes can be anywhere, indoors, outdoors, at business premises, domestic dwellings, or vehicles, and no two are ever the same.
All Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer by Michelle McNamara. Foreword by Gillian Flynn, afterword by Patton Oswalt. This book was released February 27th, 2018, comprised of 328 pages, broken down into 3 parts. It is in and of itself a true crime novel, but it does have some autobiographical of our author, Michelle McNamara. I think it can be said and understood for lovers and enthusiasts of true crime that there is that one defining moment that you realize true crime runs through your bloodstream. For me, it was as a child, the book that sat on the coffee table that I was continuously told time and time again, don't look at, don't open, don't touch. Looking back, that was just a mother trying to shield her child and protect her innocence for as long as she possibly could. And yes, of course, she could have put it away or hidden it somewhere, but that would not have invoked the interest and intrigue of a child in the adult that you see here today. That book on the coffee table was Blood Letters and Bad Men, and it was comprised of a numerous amount of grotesque true crime photos from crime scenes of various crimes in our history. It was by looking at those pictures that invoked questions within me. Questions of general crime. What is crime? Who are criminals? Who are these men and women just like you and I that decided to one day just wake up and commit these heinous crimes? Does evil truly exist? I think those same questions that invoked in me at a young age did the same for a young teen version of our author, Michelle McNamara. The year was 1984, and just a few short blocks from her childhood home, in an alleyway, lie a girl. The year was 1984. The month was August. Her name? Kathleen Lombardo. Her age? 24. Her throat was slit from ear to ear. She lay there in cold blood. And it was in those moments that Michelle McNamara asked those same riveting questions. The who, what, where, when, why, how. Where was the killer? To this day, Kathleen Lombardo's killer has yet to be found. But that started a lifelong journey for our author Michelle McNamara into true crime and unsolved mysteries, and what eventually led her to Cold Cases and the East Area Rapist, to what we now refer to as the Golden State Killer, that Michelle herself coined the name. It wasn't a quest for Michelle to unravel or unmask this killer. She said it many times in both her book, and her husband, Patton Oswalt, said it in the afterword. She never wanted the glorification or the pat on the back that said she is the one that brought this killer to light. But you have to wonder what it is about that one case, about that one individual that connects you. For some, it's the connection to an interest of the killer or perhaps the victims. For me personally, I started a quest on true crime in high school. I wanted to know more about the assassination of JFK. Everything I got my hands on, books and newspaper articles, it just wasn't enough for me. So I have the understanding and connection with our author that I understand that need, that thirst within for additional knowledge. The books on the shelves behind me possess well over 50 books on the assassination, files, eyewitness accounts. No matter how many newspaper articles I've collected, magazines I've read, or documentaries I've seen, it just wasn't enough. There was still a high level of unanswered questions for just that case. I'm not sure why Michelle McNamara chose this particular case to hone in on. She could have very easily just kept it generic and studied true crime as a whole. She did in fact go on to start a true crime blog and discussed true crime in great mass with multiple people around the world. But she one day found herself interested in this East Area Rapist, and the rest is history. Now, as I indicated, this particular book is broken down into 3 parts, but I do want to start with a quick excerpt from the introduction, and I want to read it verbatim because I don't want to mess it up, and that is from Gillian Flynn. And she says, I love reading true crime, but I've always been aware of the fact that as a reader, I am actively choosing to be a consumer of someone else's tragedy. So like any responsible consumer, I try to be careful in the choices I make. I read only the best, writers who are dogged, insightful, and humane. I love that, and I really want to keep that with me always, because many times I have embarked on true crime fascination, and I ask myself why, what is the intrigue on this particular case? As I was embarking into this book, I found that the first introduction was flawless. I got very excited. The first couple of chapters were very engrossing and captivated me. But much into the third and fourth chapter, I started to dwindle. Now, this is going to be the first in a new segment here on my channel that I'm doing in partnership with Joni over at Joni Reads, and I will list all of her information in the description box. This selection we chose merely on the basis of hype. And this book stands to reason why I avoid hype at all costs. Anything that is popular, I steer away from until it is no longer popular. But we figured, let's just try this book on for size. There's been so much discussion on it. It's got to be good, right? And it is, to a degree. I actually had to run to my local library and check out the audio version of this, which is narrated by Gaba Zachman. It's 10 hours, 11 minutes, 25 seconds, and it's divided into 10 parts. I listened to that in conjunction to reading the book. It actually helped me get through some of the jargon. With true crime, it's understandable that you have to have some type of connection to the story in order to be engrossed in it. And like I said, it started out great. The first part I thought was honestly going to pave way for most true crimes. True crime inevitably has one of three styles. You either start at the beginning and work your way to the present day. You start your way on the present day and work your way backward to the who, what, where, when, and why. Or you have this third version, which is a beautiful marriage of the two, where you get a little bit of the past and a little bit of the present, and you kind of marry them together in this beautiful story that inevitably leads you to the here and now. This story does not do that. It is broken up into three parts, where the first part in fact starts off what you think is going to be the past, where we are introduced to this individual who is burglarizing and then goes on to rape and eventually pillage and murder several different towns and communities within the state of California. But then it quickly reverts to more modern day, 2012, 2014. And there's kind of a back and forth. You also get a very clear understanding of where our author stopped writing and where our editors, who were paid by the author's husband, Patton Oswalt, whom you may know from television. He starred as Spence on The King of Queens. He was also the voice of Remy in Ratatouille. He is by heart, by nature, and on stage a comedian. He was married to McNamara for 10 years, and as we know, she divulged more than a decade into this story. They were married for 10 years, together for 13. So the entire duration of this marriage that they partnered, although he admitted he loved true crime, I think we got a good glimpse of that capacity of how much this took a toll on their marriage. You hear it in his afterword, and you also see it in the autobiographical sense in her writing. It's not tragic, it is a bit sad, because you do hear a hint of that from both her in her writing and him in his afterword. But he wanted to ensure that all of that research, all of that time spent did not go on deaf ears. So he hired the investigative journalist, Billy Jensen, and Michelle's lead researcher, which was Paul Haynes. And together, Haynes and Jensen took all of Michelle's notes and data that she had compiled into more than a decade of research, and they created what we now know as I'll Be Gone in the Dark. If you had a vested interest in knowing who the Golden State Killer was, if you wanted to know more about California, and if you really wanted to get in depth and in detail on the victims of these crimes, this is a great book. It really is. And I think had Michelle lived to see the tale come to light, I think that this book would have been prepared and presented in a different manner. Unfortunately, our author, Michelle McNamara, passed away April 21st of 2016. She did not get to prepare anything other than the writing and notes that she had written previously. It was Jensen and Haynes that decided to go ahead and just kind of put everything together and what they saw fit. Part one, although it starts out where we get an older sense of the crimes, it doesn't stay that way. Part 2, we do get a sense of more modern day from about 2009 to about 2014 in that span. And part 3 is just a hodgepodge of everything just kind of thrown together. Had they held on to it just a little bit longer, we might have been able to add the finality. On April 24th of 2018, just 2 years after McNamara's passing, authorities charged and arrested 72-year-old U.S. Navy veteran and former police officer Joseph James DeAngelo. He was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder based on DNA evidence that is wonderfully discussed in this book. So if you are interested in how the DNA database got started, this is a great read for that. I did enjoy that element. But due to California's statute of limitations, unfortunately, any rapes that took place prior to 2017, he could not be charged with. He has committed at least 13 murders, over 50 rapes, and well over 100 burglaries. They were able in August to charge him with at least 13 kidnapping and abduction attempts, but this will be an ongoing case for many years to come. In an article I recently read in Rolling Stone magazine, it said that based on his state representation status, this could take up to 20 years and cost the state of California well over $20 million to convict DeAngelo. I don't know if that's necessarily what McNamara had in mind. I think that she just simply wanted someone to pay for these heinous crimes. I think that for once she wanted to take a cold case and bring some warmth to it. I think that inevitably her quest was always to seek out justice for Lombardo. I wonder why she didn't put as much effort into that case as she did here. But our East Area rapist has absorbed not only the crimes of that, but as well as the original Night Stalker, the Vancilla Ransacker, and eventually comes to now be known as simply the Golden State Killer. He absorbed all of those heinous crimes between 1974 and 1986. So again, if your vest was to know more about him and to know about these crimes, and the beauty in her writing was that she actually brought life to the victims. It's very rare in a true crime book that you get such a vivid picture of who the decedent was. Oftentimes we get this great engrossed and enlarged picture of our criminal and our mastermind, but we very rarely get an insight as to the victims that suffered at the hands of this killer, and we get that here with her. Michelle McNamara passed away in her sleep. It was a combination of an unknown heart condition in addition to an accidental drug overdose of a combination of Adderall, fentanyl, and Xanax. There was very little discussion from Oswald in reference to that situation, and I think that it was just him keeping things private. But he did want to ensure that this book got published. So I think it was just as much of a pride and success for him to see the light of day as it was for Michelle to have seen this. I had a very hard time getting through this book up until I got, like I said, the audio, and I was able to kind of segue through that. I think that the audio definitely helped me to capture all of those very intrinsic details, because you do get a lot of very specific details with not only your victims but your killer. However, I have to be true to a review. Although I originally had given this 4 stars, I literally slept on it and I had to think about it, and that wouldn't be true to the type of book that this is. This book is choppy. This book did not, unfortunately, get its author's final approval, and it is quite difficult if you're just merely reading through the book to kind of keep up with the before and the now and the after. So in all fairness, it is very detailed, it is very well written. I have nothing bad to say about our author, but overall I do give this book 3 stars. I liked it, I read it, I enjoyed what I read, but I don't see myself ever going back, and I don't necessarily see myself recommending this to anyone other than those that have a quest for information on serial killers as a whole, or someone that has a vested interest in specifically the Golden State Killer or the state of California. There are elements, like I said, that dissect the DNA platform and the integration of that into how we look at crime scenes now. So there is some beautiful elements to this story, but overall it is very difficult to get through. I hope that you will be able to join Joni and I to discuss this book live. We will be doing that tomorrow here on my channel, January 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We do know that there are situations that will prevent you from being able to join us. So in that case, you can definitely catch it in the afterword. But we do want to ensure that if you want to continue on reading through Crime Scene and you aren't going to be able to hear the new book for March, as this is a bi-monthly book club, we are going to be showcasing for the month of March Columbine by David Cullen. I specifically chose this book and pushed my way in because Columbine is embarking on a 20-year anniversary in April of this year. This plays a huge role in my life and tugs at my heartstrings like you would not believe. I have so many connections to this story, and I feel that this story will forever be a part of who I am. In terms of so many aspects of true crime. So I am very much looking forward to the conversation. I am very much looking forward to diving into this book. It is also available on audio if you prefer that method. It is kind of a meaty book. It's about 452 pages, but looking through it, there is a bibliography section, there is also an index, and there is some notations by our author. So overall, the book is probably about 375 pages. But this will be March's choice, and all the details, of course, will be linked in the description. And hopefully you can join us tomorrow evening as we discuss the current read, which is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. Until next time, I will see you real soon. Take care.